sort of the law of the case, or the practice of this case, of these Kastigar hearings, I guess is what we'll call these. Mr. Gladden, is the state ready this morning?
Yes, Judge, the state's ready. Before the state calls any witnesses, the state has a request of the court. I provided the court this morning and defense counsel a copy of a case from the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, United States of America versus Paul Slough, S-L-O-U-G-H. That's 641 F. 3rd 544. And the reason why I provided that case to the court, Judge, is on page 551 of the opinion, which is page 4 of the printed PDF. The court pointed out that in the United States v. North, they noted that under the Garrity-Kastigar inquiry, the defendant bears the burden of laying a firm foundation resting on more than suspicion that proffered evidence was tainted by exposure to immunized testimony. I think, Judge, at this point with the hearings we've had with at least 4 to 5 witnesses, the state at this point would ask the court to make a determination whether there is any more than mere suspicion on the part of the defense that there was any taint by exposure to immunized testimony in this case, both in the sense that the state has made the argument that the walkthrough was not a Garrity statement at all, and that the defense has repeatedly accused the state of having access to a Garrity statement in the defendant's IA file. The state has informed this court in open court that no one on the prosecution team has ever seen that statement and did not even know that that statement existed. In the absence of anything more than a mere allegation, the state would ask this court to shut down this inquiry.
All right. Are you going to call any witnesses?
I have witnesses to continue the Kastigar hearings, Judge, but if the court makes a ruling on the state's request, then that will change what witnesses I may call.
I think the ruling would be premature at this point. I'm going to give Mr. Gill an opportunity to put witnesses forward that he's informed the court yesterday he wanted to put forward. So, are you resting?
Yes, Judge.
Okay.
Instead, call Detective Fetter.
Okay. Hi, Detective. If you would please come to the front of the courtroom. And before you have a seat, watch your step. I'm sure you are familiar. Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth. Please have a seat. Be responding to questions from Mr. Gladden and perhaps also Mr. Gill or Mr. Brissett to your left. You may proceed when ready.
Good morning, Detective Fetter. Can you please state and spell your full name for the court reporter?
It's Billy Fetter, B-I-L-L-Y, F-E-T-T-E-R.
How are you currently employed?
With the Dallas Sheriff's Department.
What is your position with the Dallas Sheriff's Department?
Currently assigned as a detective.
Okay. Detective Fetter, on April 30th, 2017, did you come into contact with the defendant, Roy Oliver?
Yes.
How did you come into contact with him?
It was during a walkthrough.
Can you very briefly tell the court what a walkthrough is?
We do a walkthrough during a critical incident, custody death, shootings, officer-involved shootings, and stuff like that. That basically we're getting the officers involved, their side, the basic side of what occurred.
Is this part of a administrative investigation or a criminal investigation?
On our part, strictly criminal.
Now, we've heard in this case that Mr. Oliver at the time was a police officer with the Balch Springs Police Department. Now, you're a detective with the Dallas County Sheriff's Office. Why were you involved in investigating this case?
Balch Springs Police Department requested the Sheriff's Department to conduct the officer-involved shooting and basically the officer-involved shooting investigation when we first got dispatched.
Was Mr. Oliver an employee of the Dallas County Sheriff's Department?
No, sir.
Did the Dallas County Sheriff's Department have any authority to terminate his employment with the Balch Springs Police Department if he refused to participate in your investigation?
No, sir.
When you conducted the walkthrough with Mr. Oliver on April 30th, do you know about what time that was?
It's between 5:16 and 5:30 a.m.
And how many people were there?
It's quite not quite a few. It's myself, Detective Carranza, currently it was Lieutenant Sparks, he's the captain.
I'm sorry,
currently a captain, Lieutenant Sparks. He was Lieutenant Sparks then. He overseen the walkthrough. We had a PES detective, Whaley, and a lieutenant from Balch Springs.
Do you know the name of the lieutenant from Balch Springs?
Not offhand.
Did you see that lieutenant here in the courthouse yesterday?
Yes.
Was he an older gentleman with white hair?
Yes.
I told you his name was Lieutenant Merritt.
Sounds familiar.
Okay. Did you speak with Lieutenant Merritt?
On scene?
Yes.
No. When we introduced ourselves, he was there, but besides that, that was it.
Did he participate in the walkthrough in any way?
He stood back and just watched.
Okay. Who during the walkthrough actually spoke with Mr. Oliver?
Myself, I believe Detective Carranza, but mainly myself at the beginning.
Okay. Before this walkthrough, did you administer any kind of warnings whatsoever to Mr. Oliver?
No, I did not.
Did Mr. Oliver have an attorney present during this walkthrough?
Yes, he did.
Do you know the name of his attorney?
Cindy Stromer,
Okay.
if I'm saying it right.
And was she there from the outset of the walkthrough?
She was there with Mr. Oliver.
So she was present along with multiple people from the Dallas County Sheriff's Department, and then Lieutenant Merritt was just tagging along and having no interaction.
Yes.
Was Ms. Stormer participating actively in the walkthrough?
She was beside him. She didn't say very much.
Okay. Did Mr. Oliver during the walkthrough ever invoke his right to remain silent?
No.
Did you ever give Mr. Oliver any Miranda warnings?
No.
Did you ever, well, let me ask this, was Mr. Oliver under arrest at the time?
No.
Was he in custody at the time?
No.
Was he free to leave?
Yes.
Detective Fetter, just to be clear, did you prepare any written reports as a result of this investigation?
I did a supplement and also I did a search warrant.
Okay. Are you aware of whether Mr. Oliver ever gave a written statement to the Balch Springs Police Department?
That night or during the
Let's start with
investigation?
That night, were you aware if he had given one?
No.
Since that time, have you become aware that he may have given a written statement?
It was disclosed on Tuesday when I was here.
Okay.
That's the first time I've heard of it.
And that was because the defense filed a motion in this court letting everybody know
Yes.
that the defendant had given a statement?
Yes.
Okay.
Sir, when you say it was disclosed, do you mean the existence of it, but you haven't actually read it?
I've never seen it.
Ever?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for clarifying that, Judge. So Detective Fetter, even if a statement existed, you would have no idea what it said?
Yeah, I've never seen it.
Okay. Have you spoken to Lieutenant Merritt about the facts of this case?
No.
Have you ever spoken to a Lieutenant Hurley with the Balch Springs Police Department about anything?
I don't know who that is. No.
Okay. So obviously you've also never spoken to him about the facts of this case?
No.
Do you know who Chief Haber is?
I've seen him on TV.
Okay. Have you ever spoken to him about the facts of this case?
No, sir.
The supplemental report that you prepared during your investigation of this case, what was the source of your knowledge in preparing that report?
This is the information we obtained through the investigation.
Okay. Just want to detail, did that include what Mr. Oliver said to you during the walkthrough?
Yes.
Did that include watching body-worn camera footage?
Yes.
Did that include statements by Officer Gross?
Yes.
Did that include 911 call sheet reports?
Yes. Balch Springs, yes.
Did that include your observations of the crime scene?
Yes.
Did that include your interview with witnesses at Baylor Hospital?
On telephone, yes.
Did that include your conversations with Detective Whaley?
Yes.
Did that include any Garrity statements by Mr. Oliver?
No.
Now, Detective Fetter, did you also prepare a search warrant in this case?
Yes, I do.
And I guess I should be accurate, not a search warrant, but a search warrant affidavit.
Yes.
Was the source of the statements in your search warrant affidavit the same as the source of your statements in your supplemental report?
Yes.
Was your affidavit in any way based on a Garrity statement by Mr. Oliver?
No.
That's the limit, Judge.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Detective.
Morning, sir.
My name's Bob Gill. I have a few questions for you also. All right.
Yes, sir.
So you went to that scene in the early morning hours of April the 30th of 2017. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you went out there as a member of the Dallas County Sheriff's Office.
Yes.
Is that right? Approximately what time did you arrive on the scene?
I can look at my notes. Approximately 1:24 a.m. I arrived.
Did you arrive along with Carranza, or did he arrive separately?
He was already on scene. He arrived before I did.
And you and Carranza were originally sent out on April 30th of 2017 to investigate an officer-involved shooting. Is that right?
That's true. Correct.
And that is a different investigation than a criminal investigation, isn't it?
No.
It's preliminary to a criminal investigation, isn't it?
It's a criminal investigation.
An officer-involved shooting is a disciplinary investigation until such time as it turns into a criminal investigation. Is that right?
No. We do criminal investigations. We don't do administrative investigations.
You were dispatched in those early morning hours to assist the Ball Springs Police Department with an officer-involved shooting.
We wasn't assisting. They did ask for assistance to conduct their investigation.
You took over the investigation from them.
Yes.
And the investigation that you took over was an officer-involved shooting at that point.
Officer involved shooting, yes.
And you testified that you were out there and participated in a walkthrough with Mr. Oliver. He's the person not directly to my right, but the second person to my right. Is that correct?
That's true. Correct.
And you, I believe you testified, you were the primary interviewer of Mr. Oliver. Is that correct?
I spoke with him, yes.
Well, who was the primary interviewer?
Detective Carranza is the lead detective on the case.
Do you know now, or, well, let me ask you this, did you know then that Officer Oliver had received a Garrity warning at 3:20 a.m.?
No, sir, I did not.
When did you learn that?
When he received it, the Garrity
When
warrant,
did you learn that he received the Garrity warning?
Tuesday in court.
Did it surprise you that Officer Oliver had received a Garrity warning before you had conducted your walkthrough?
We didn't know that he
Did it
received it.
surprise you when you learned that, is my question.
It was caught off guard because it was our investigation, yes. Our criminal investigation, yes. It was surprising.
Typically, what is done is that if there's going to be a criminal investigation conducted, the criminal investigation is conducted before the internal affairs investigation is conducted, so that the Garrity issues don't interfere with the criminal investigation.
Judge, I would object to that.
Hang on just a second.
The investigation run parallel.
That's for the witness to say. Go ahead, your objection's overruled. If you know the answer, go ahead, please.
Sorry, repeat the question,
I
sir.
will, sir. Typically, what happens if there's going to be an internal affairs investigation and a criminal investigation, in the best practice, according to the International Association of Chiefs of Police and your department, is for the criminal investigation to proceed first and the internal affairs investigation to proceed following the criminal investigation. Is that correct?
It doesn't always occur that way.
Let's talk about best practices. My question were to be, is the best practice for the criminal investigation to proceed first, to be followed by the Garrity or the internal affairs investigation? Do you understand that to be the best practice recommended by the International Association from chiefs of police and your department?
That would be the best practice, yes, but it doesn't happen that way.
That is, my question is that the best practice? Your answer is yes, is that
Yes.
correct? And that is so that the garrity warnings that an individual would receive during the internal affairs investigation would not interfere with the criminal investigation, is that right?
Sure, correct.
So if the criminal investigation could be completed, and then the department or another department could undertake the internal affairs investigation without interfering with the criminal investigation, correct?
Correct. In an ideal world.
In an ideal situation, and that's because of the way the law reads, is that right?
Sure.
I'm sorry?
Sure, yes.
Have you had occasion to review a report that was prepared by Detective Carranza in this case?
The case summary?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Let me show you what's now remarked as Defendant's Exhibit Number 2, and ask if you've ever seen that document before.
I believe this is our RMS report.
What is an RMS report?
It's basically our reporting system. It's a report management system. This is not, I don't believe this is his case summary. This is the report that was generated saying that we're pretty much doing an investigation.
It's entitled Sheriff's Department Case Summary Investigation Report, is that correct?
Yes.
So the question we're put to you, have you ever seen this document before? Have you seen it?
This particular one, no.
Do you recognize the contents of this document?
It's pretty much describing what occurred while we was conducting the investigation.
So do you recognize the contents of the document?
The contents, I've never seen the RMS report, no.
Let me direct to you at the bottom of page 2 of this document, there's a paragraph that starts off at 5:20 a.m.
Right here? Yes.
Have you seen that paragraph in this document or other documents before?
Verbatim, sir? No. If it's, this is the initial RMS report. Verbatim, I'm not for sure if this is it or not.
Is it an accurate rendition of what occurred out there during the walkthrough with Officer Oliver?
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. The witness has said he doesn't recognize this document. He doesn't recognize it verbatim. I think it's improper to continue asking witnesses questions from a document he's never seen before.
Until you can prove that up, Mr. Gill, I'm going to sustain the objection.
Did Officer Oliver out there tell you that the driver of the vehicle did not comply with Officer Gross's commands?
To stop?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Did he tell you that he feared the vehicle was going to hit Gross as it... I'm sorry. Did he tell you that he feared that the vehicle was going to hit Gross and fire as it sped away?
Yes.
Did he tell you that he saw movement inside the vehicle but could only see silhouettes?
Yes.
And is that something that has been reported in Dallas County Sheriff's Office offense reports?
I believe it was a case summary. I noted that in my supplement.
You noted in your supplement.
Yes.
And it's also noted in the main offense report that was prepared in this case by Detective Bronze, isn't it?
I believe so, in the case summary.
And all of those documents were transferred from the Dallas County Sheriff's Office to the Dallas County District Attorney's Office for purposes of this prosecution. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you know when that occurred?
No, I do not, sir.
Mr. Gill, I want to be clear. The statements you were asking that are attributable to your client were made in the walkthrough that we're talking about. Is that right?
Is that correct, Detective?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Because that's the only interview you conducted with Mr. Oliver, is that correct?
That's correct.
So any statements you can attribute to Mr. Oliver came during that walkthrough at 5:20 a.m. on April the 30th of 2017, is that right?
Yes.
After that walkthrough, did you have occasion to prepare a search warrant affidavit?
Yes, I have. Yes, I did.
Let me show you what's now been marked as Defendant's Exhibit Number 3 and ask if you recognize the contents of Defendant's Number 3.
Yes, I did.
Is that the search warrant that you prepared in this case that we've been talking about?
Yes.
And what was the object of that search warrant?
To have the rifle that was used during the incident, during the offense, for forensic analysis.
And when you say the rifle that was used during this, it was the rifle that you understood to have been used by Officer Oliver.
That's
Is that correct?
yes.
And you prepared the affidavit for this search warrant and swore to it on May the 4th, 2017. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that is your signature that appears on the document. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you swore to this in front of a district judge in Dallas County.
Yes.
And and the judge granted the warrant and allowed you to conduct a search of the rifle. Is that right?
Yes.
And after the judge permitted that, your department conducted the search of the rifle. Is that correct?
It took it to Swift's. It was submitted to Swift's.
And they did a search at your direction and at the direction of the district judge here in Dallas County.
That's correct.
And we offer Defendant's Exhibit 3.
Defense 3 is admitted for purposes of this hearing.
And Detective Fetter, since April the 30th of 2017, since the time you conducted an interview with Mr. Oliver out at the scene at 5:20 a.m., how many meetings have you had with the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office personnel?
To give you an accurate number, I'm unable to give you an accurate number.
Well, give me your best guess.
I'm not going to guess. I'm not.
More than one?
Yes.
More than 5?
I'm not. It's probably more than one, less than 10.
And do you recall who with the Criminal District Attorney's Office you met with about this case?
It was several people.
Do you remember any names?
The Public Integrity Unit, Jason Hermes, his staff.
You have worked closely with the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office Public Integrity Unit throughout the investigation and prosecution of this case, is that right?
It's true.
Did you happen to meet with Mr. Hermes and Mr. George Lewis at the scene on April the 30th of 2017?
I know Mr. Hermes was there. I'm not sure about Mr. Lewis. I don't remember.
But you definitely remember Mr. Hermes being out there on that day.
Yes.
And when you have met with the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office regarding this case, have you discussed with them your investigation?
The findings?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was disclosed, yes.
And did they have copies of the investigation report in the case?
That would be Detective Kronz's report.
Yes, sir. Did they have copies of it?
I would assume it was submitted.
It would be a pretty unusual situation for the Criminal District Attorney's Office to not have a full copy of the Sheriff's Department investigation in a case like this with them.
Yes, I mean,
You would expect them to have that report, wouldn't you?
everything was submitted, yes.
And did you discuss with them also the details of your walkthrough interview with Mr. Oliver on April 30th of 2017 at 5:20 a.m.?
Discuss, they was told of the findings.
They were told the findings, right?
It was a brief conversation.
No matter how brief the conversation was, they were informed of what you learned during that walkthrough interview with Mr. Oliver. Is that correct?
Not completely. They was briefed.
What did you brief them on?
I mean, the basic walkthrough. They obtained my written notes, which,
Did they obtain the information as you and I discussed earlier?
and what information that would be.
The information contained in this paragraph at the bottom of page 2 on Defendant's Exhibit number 2.
Do they obtain this information?
Yes, sir.
I mean, this is Detective Kronz's report.
Did you discuss that information with them?
I mean, it's, I mean, I cannot recall if I did or not. I mean, to be honest, because this is Detective Kronz's initial report. It mirrors the walkthrough, yes.
It's accurate, isn't it?
It's not fully detailed, but yes, it was accurate.
But what appears here is accurate, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah.
When was your first meeting with the Criminal District Attorney's Office personnel to discuss the results of this investigation?
The results of the investigation, it was on Monday morning.
Monday morning, what?
The incident happened, we got dispatched out on, so May 1st? Should have been May 1st.
April 30th was a Sunday.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It was dispatched on April 30th, and you were out there in the early morning hours. And the next day being Monday, that day, you had a meeting with the Public Integrity Unit of the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office to discuss with them what you had learned thus far in that investigation. Is that right?
Yes.
And you told them, didn't you?
Yes, that was briefed.
Let me hand you what's been now remarked as defendant's exhibit number 4 and ask if you recognize that document.
It appears to be my supplement
Is it your supplement?
because it doesn't have all the, yes,
It's in fact page 3 of the supplement you represented earlier to be your report.
yes,
Is that right?
my supplement, yes.
And so you recognize the contents of the defendant's exhibit number 4?
It matches, yes.
And defendant's exhibit 4 contains a recitation of what you wrote regarding that walkthrough interview with Officer Oliver. Is that right?
Yes,
And you start off by saying that at the beginning of the walkthrough, at the end of the walkthrough, Detective Whaley collected Officer Gross's service weapon. Is that right?
yes.
Talking about the rifle there or the sidearm?
Sidearm,
People present at the walkthrough are detailed in this report also, being Lieutenant Sparks, Detective Carranza, yourself, Detective Whaley, who's also with your department, and the Ball Springs IAD lieutenant.
that's true.
Correct?
Correct.
And this supplemental report, page 3, goes on to detail what you learned from Officer Oliver during that interview. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of preparing this supplemental report?
It's my investigation, what I've learned at the scene.
And the purpose of preparing it is so that you can share with other people in the investigation and prosecution of the case. Is that right?
Yes,
So that they know what you learned out there.
yes,
So that they know what the evidence is. Is that right?
yes.
And this page, along with the rest of your supplement, was made available and in fact given to the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office, wasn't it?
I provided to Detective Carranza for the case folder.
Judge, at this point, I think the evidence is clear. The state is willing to agree, stipulate that
Let's hear
the
it.
substance of Officer Oliver's walkthrough was disclosed to everybody.
All right. How does that stipulation sound, Mr. Gill?
What does everybody mean?
To every investigator who worked on this case and to the district attorney's office, to the defense team, these reports contain information learned during the walkthrough. There's no dispute to that. The only issue regarding the walkthrough is whether it's a Garrity statement at all.
All right. Mr. Gill, do you agree with that?
I agree with the first part that it was shared widely among the Criminal District Attorney's Office. I don't agree that there's an issue about whether it was a Garrity statement. It was a Garrity statement.
Okay. Regarding the factual assertion, I mean, I think I've heard plenty that this witness, and I suppose all others besides Lieutenant Merritt and the chief, and there might have been another one who was involved in the internal affairs investigation, is not DSO. I've got a number of witnesses who say that they were at the walkthrough and they were not given any information from Balch Springs about the internal affairs and what Mr. Oliver's statement was. That's what I'd like to get at. I believe your contention is that everything after Mr. Oliver was given his Garrity statement is tainted and should not have been used for any purpose. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. But factually, though, I believe I've got a very clear picture that Mr. Oliver made statements at the walkthrough that you contend are tainted by Garrity. He contends they're not Garrity statements, but the fact that those statements were made, I don't believe are in dispute, and the fact that they were memorialized in reports that were given to the prosecution team, I don't believe that that's in dispute either, from the state's perspective.
No, Judge.
What do you think about that?
We offer Defendant's Exhibit 4.
All right, Defendant's Exhibit 4 is admitted. Is there anything else that would test this witness's taint, possible Garrity taint, from what his basis of knowledge is, not Officer Carranza or anybody else, but his basis of knowledge?
Who else did you discuss the findings of your investigation with, other than the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office?
As the
Judge, I'm going to object. Again, that is not relevant until this court determines whether the walkthrough was a Garrity statement at all.
Well-
And that's a threshold question under Kastigar.
Well, I suppose if he said that he went and talked to the Balch Springs Police Department as part of their internal affairs investigation, that would be relevant, so I'm going to overrule your objection. Go ahead, Mr. Gill.
Who else besides the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office did you talk to regarding the findings of your investigation?
no one.
Did you talk to the death investigator from the Dallas County, from SWIFT, the medical examiner's office here?
She was contacted that night.
So the question is, did you talk to someone during your investigation who you knew to be with the Southwest Institute of Forensic Sciences?
Judge, I'm going to object. Southwest Institute of Forensic Sciences is not the Balch Springs Police Department. Unless the walkthrough was a Garrity statement, that's not relevant.
I understand. I'm still determining whether it's a Garrity statement or not. It's a good objection as far as relevance for this hearing, though, Mr. Gill. Is there any way you can tie the SWIFT's employee to the Balch Springs and the Garrity investigation that was going on? It's internal affairs investigation.
Ultimately, part of the court's inquiry is going to be what all was tainted by knowledge that was obtained during this Garrity statement.
Okay. All right.
And the state brought up earlier the fact that this witness had prepared a search warrant for an item, which is certainly relevant. He did it after he obtained the information from the Garrity statement.
Okay.
Judge, the state will stipulate that the walkthrough influenced decisions regarding search warrants, evidence collected, witnesses interviewed, the autopsy, every piece of evidence in this case, the state will stipulate is influenced by this walkthrough. It was part of the investigation.
All right. Very good. How does that stipulation sound to you, Mr. Gill? And I think what they're saying
It's
is...
a whole lot lengthier than me just being able to ask this witness who he talked to. He talked to someone from Swiss about it.
Well, he's willing to stipulate to that.
I like to stipulate. I like stipulations, but it seems like we don't get stipulations out of anybody until we get questions asked of a witness. So, may I finish asking this witness the simple question of who he talked to and
All right, tell you what, I'll let you finish that line of questioning, and then I'll have some suggestions. Very good. Go ahead.
Detective Fed, did you remember the question?
The question is who I disclosed, or who I spoke with about
Not
this
the
investigation.
question. The question was whether or not you disclosed it to Southwestern Institute of Forensic Science, an employee there, which I'm assuming is the field agent.
Yes, I spoke with the field agent that night, yes.
Do you remember approximately what time?
Approximately 3:26 a.m.
Who passed the witness?
You don't have any questions, do you?
No, Judge.
Thank you very much. You may stand down, sir. Thank you very much. Please don't discuss your testimony with anybody else. You're still a witness in this case. Do you have anything else regarding this hearing?
Judge, until the court makes a ruling on whether the walkthrough was a Garrity statement,
It's kind of like asking me to decide, you know, I think it would be premature. Do you have anything else for this hearing? I'll let you rebut the defense if you need to.
yes, Judge, my complaint to the court is I'm about to call Detective Carranza to ask him if the walkthrough is conducted by the Dallas County Sheriff's Office or the Balch Springs Police Department. And then I expect another 15-minute cross-examination to establish who they talked to about the walkthrough, and I've stipulated that they've talked to everyone. I don't think the facts are going to be in dispute, but I'm more than happy to call Detective Carranza.
Okay. If you're asking my opinion about whether you should or should not, I can't give that to
I
you.
understand.
Are you resting or are you not?
No, Judge, they will call Detective Carranza.
Okay. I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
Very good, Judge.
If you're moving the ball forward, then I'll let you continue. If you're not, then I'm going to shut you down. Mr. Gill, and it's the same for you. Both sides get 10 minutes with this witness. Go ahead. Sir, if you could please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
Yes, sir.
Please have a seat. We'll respond to questions from Mr. Gladden and perhaps also Mr. Gill. Mr. Gladden is going to be as succinct as he can. Go ahead, Mr. Gladden.
Thank you, Judge. Detective Carranza, can you spell your full name for the court reporter?
My name is Juan Carranza. First name spelled in J-U-A-N. Last name spelled C-A-R-R-A-N-Z-A.
And in the interest of time, Mr. Gladden, since we're not in front of the jury, I'll let you lead the witness. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Detective, you are a detective with the Dallas County Sheriff's Office, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And on April 30th, 2017, you conducted a walkthrough in a criminal investigation with Officer Oliver, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And at that walkthrough, other detectives with the Dallas County Sheriff's Department were present, is that right?
Yes.
And a lieutenant of the Balch Springs Police Department was present at the scene, is that correct?
Yes.
Did he have any interaction with you or Mr. Oliver at the scene?
Not at all.
How did Mr. Oliver get to the walkthrough?
I forget how direct contact was made, but I was able to communicate with Ms. Cindy Stormer, who at that time was representing Mr. Oliver.
Okay.
Spoke to her, told her who I was, told her I was with the Dallas County Sheriff's Office. I asked her if she would agree for Mr. Oliver to do a walkthrough of the scene with us. She agreed. 5 or 6 minutes later, they arrived at the scene, and they agreed to do the walkthrough. The walkthrough took maybe 10 minutes.
And during that walkthrough, Mr. Oliver described what happened, and you memorialized that in the report, is that correct?
Yes.
And before and during this walkthrough, you never read a garroting warning to Mr. Oliver, is that right?
I did not, no.
You never gave him a Miranda warning, is that correct?
No,
He was not under arrest, right?
he was not under arrest,
He was not in custody.
not in custody.
He was free to leave if he wanted to,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
And his attorney was present during the entire walkthrough, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You are not employed by the Balch Springs Police Department, is that correct?
Correct, I'm not.
You have no authority to terminate Mr. Oliver from any employment if he refuses to participate in the walkthrough, is that right?
Yes.
Your Honor, while we are trying to expedite this, we
Yes, sir.
object to continue leading.
Okay. I'll note your objection for the record. It's overruled. We'll give you a running objection to the leading questions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Were you in uniform during the walkthrough?
No, I was not.
Were you wearing a suit like you're wearing today?
Something similar, yes.
Did you identify yourself as a detective with the Dallas County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
Did you make it very clear that the Dallas County Sheriff's Office was conducting this walkthrough?
Yes, sir.
You were conducting a criminal investigation, is that correct?
Well, an officer-involved shooting is a criminal investigation, yes.
And you were asked to conduct a criminal investigation by the Balch Springs Police Department, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You were not conducting an internal investigation, is
No.
that correct? Balch Springs was conducting an internal investigation.
Yes.
And you had no interaction with the internal affairs lieutenant from the Balch Springs Police Department?
None at all.
Okay. That's what it's, Judge.
Mr. Gill?
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, Detective.
Morning.
When you were sent out to the scene on April the 30th, 2017, you were dispatched on an officer-involved shooting call. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you arrived at the scene, who was there?
Members of the Balch Springs Police Department, Do you want me to name names, or?
Yes, sir, I do.
I can recall Lieutenant Waltz, Sergeant Waltz from the Baltimore Police Department, and Detective Alan Bird. Those are the two names I can recall. And also my Sergeant, Kevin Fineglass, Lieutenant Howard Sparks, members from the crime scene, Garrick Whaley, and Sergeant Patrick Fassett.
And the walkthrough interview that you conducted with Officer Oliver, and do you recognize Officer Oliver here today?
Yes,
He's the second person to my right, is that correct?
he's the gentleman standing up in the gray suit.
Judge, would the record reflect he's identified Mr. Oliver?
Record shall so reflect.
President, we heard testimony previously that Lieutenant Sparks, yourself, Detective Whaley, Detective Fetter, and Ball Springs Lieutenant Internal Affairs Investigator Merritt were all present at that walkthrough. Would that be an accurate rendition?
Yes, sir.
And you questioned Mr. Oliver during that walkthrough?
I questioned him as well as Detective Fetter as well.
Let me show you what we marked as Defendant's Exhibit Number 2 and ask if you recognize Defendant's Exhibit Number 2.
Yeah, that's my supplement report, yes.
And you prepared that report?
Yes, sir.
And was that report provided to the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office?
I believe so, yes.
It was, wasn't it?
Yes.
That's one of the reasons you write the report, isn't it?
Yes.
And on page 2 of the report, the last paragraph on that page, did you write that paragraph?
This one?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And that was contained in the reports that you provided to the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office. Is that right?
Yes.
We offer defendants 2. No objection.
Defense 2 is admitted for record purposes only, purposes of this hearing. Go ahead.
And that last paragraph of Defendant's Exhibit Number 2, the last 2 sentences read, "The driver did not comply." Sorry, it'd be 3 sentences. Oliver feared that the vehicle was going to hit Gross and fired as it sped away. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oliver stated that he saw movement inside the vehicle, but could only see silhouettes.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's information you learned from Officer Oliver during that walkthrough. Is that right?
Yes.
Let me show you now what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit Number 5, and ask if you've ever seen that before.
I haven't seen this before.
Did you testify in front of the Dallas County Grand Jury regarding your investigation in this case?
Yes, I was present, yes.
Question is, did you testify in front of the Dallas County Grand Jury in this case?
Very brief, yes.
So the answer, if I ask you if you testified in front of the Dallas County Grand Jury, the answer is yes.
Yes.
And was it Mr. Snipes, the lead prosecutor in this case, that conducted the direct examination of you?
Yes.
And then you were also asked questions during your grand jury testimony by Mr. Jason Hermes, is that correct?
Yes.
And that grand jury testimony occurred on July the 17th of 2017, is that right?
I don't recall the exact date, but that sounds about right.
Sometime in July of 2017?
Yes.
Certainly after the date that you conducted the walkthrough interview with Officer Oliver, is that right?
Yes.
Did you also have occasion, after having conducted that walkthrough interview with Officer Oliver, did you have occasion to prepare some arrest warrant and search warrant affidavits in this case?
I prepared an arrest warrant, yes.
Show you what's been marked as defendant's exhibit number 6. Do you recognize exhibit number 6?
I do, yes.
What is it?
It's an probable cause affidavit from an arrest warrant.
For Mr. Oliver, is that
Yes.
right? For the offense of murder?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And what day did you prepare that?
Looks like on May 5th, 2017.
Did you also have occasion to prepare a couple of search warrant affidavits asking to be allowed to search a 2004 Chevrolet Impala?
Yes.
Defendant's exhibit number 7, do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
And that is a search warrant for the 2004 Chevy Impala, is that correct?
Yes.
And what day did you prepare that search warrant affidavit?
May 1st, 2017. I'm sorry, May 3rd, 2017.
And do you recognize defendant's exhibit 8?
Yes.
And what is defendant's exhibit 8?
It's a second search warrant for the same vehicle.
And when was that search warrant affidavit prepared?
July 12, 2017.
And did a judge grant each of these warrants and allow you to search the items that you want to search?
Yes, sir.
And did the judge grant the arrest warrant in order the arrest of Mr. Oliver for the offense of murder?
Yes, sir.
We offer 6, 7, and 8. No objections, Judge.
6, 7, and 8 are admitted for purposes of this hearing only. May I see those, Mr. Gill? Thank you.
How many meetings have you had with the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office staff regarding this case?
I can't tell you exactly how many. Several.
More than one?
Yes.
More than 5?
About 5.
When did those begin?
Thank you.
Monday, I believe it was Monday, May the 1st, or that first Monday of May.
2017.
Yes.
And you've had approximately 5 meetings since that time, is that right?
Yes, sir.
How many of those meetings were before you testified in the Dallas County grand jury?
Maybe 3.
Did you discuss with the district attorney's staff the findings of your investigation?
Yes.
And the findings of your investigation that you discuss include the information you learned from the walkthrough with Officer Oliver on April 30th, 2017.
Yes.
And I may have already asked this, but you provided the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office with copies of your reports detailing the results of that walkthrough interview that you identified with. Is that right?
Yes.
What is your Dallas County Sheriff's Department ID number?
489.
What's your call sign for assignments?
308.
Did you receive, how did you receive your dispatch on April 30th of 2017 to begin your work on this investigation?
It was sometime after midnight, shortly after midnight. I received a phone call from my dispatch asking to contact Sergeant Waltz from the Balch Springs Police Department.
And once you contacted the sergeant with Balch Springs, probably shortly after that, you were on your way out to the location, is that right?
I wasn't at home at the time, so I went home, changed out, and got in my car and headed toward Balch Springs.
Who passed the witness?
Thank you very much.
Judge, I have to clear up two things
Go
I
ahead.
neglected earlier. Detective Carranza, during your investigation of this case, did you ever know whether the defendant gave a written or oral statement to the Balch Springs Police Department Internal Affairs Officer?
I did not know. I wasn't aware of that.
Are you aware now that he may have given a statement?
I am now.
When did you become aware of that?
Probably this past Monday.
And that was because the defense made everyone aware of that.
Yes, sir.
Do you know the contents of that statement?
I do not.
When you were dispatched to assist Balch Springs and take over the criminal investigation, you said it was shortly after midnight. Was that before 3 o'clock in the morning?
Can you ask me the question again?
Your dispatch to go to the scene, was that before 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
Nothing further, Judge.
We don't have anything else.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir. You may stand down. It's possible you might be a witness, so please don't discuss your testimony with anybody.
Yes, sir.
else. Watch your step. Do you have any witnesses that might add anything additional, in your opinion, to what we've heard already?
No, Judge, I do
Very
not.
good. Mr. Gill, do you have any witnesses you wish to call?
I do. The state has finished their presentation, Judge.
They have.
We call Jason Hermes.
Mr.
Judge, at this point, the state would re-urge its request before members of the district attorney's office are examined by the defense team. The state would ask this court to make a finding of whether there's any more than mere suspicion or allegation of impropriety by the district attorney's office in possession of hearing material.
I'm going to deny that request at this point. Mr. Hermes, if you would, please. Please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Very good. Now, you'll be answering questions from Mr. Gill, perhaps also Mr. Gladden. Mr. Gill?
Good morning, Mr. Hermes.
Hello, Mr. Gill.
Tell us your full name, please,
Jason M. Hermes.
and how are you employed?
I'm with the Dallas District Attorney's Office
And how long have you been employed with the Dallas District Attorney's Office?
since November 2002.
Were you employed there on April the 30th, 2017?
Yes.
And what was your assignment at the time?
I was Chief of the Public Integrity Division.
And what is the responsibility of the Public Integrity Division?
I mean, that's a long answer, but I didn't give you the long answer, Mr. Gill, but one of the roles the Public Integrity Unit does is we do independent investigations of officer-involved shootings.
Were you made aware that a shooting had occurred in Balch Springs, Texas on April 29th of 2017?
Yes, sir.
And as part of your job responsibilities, did you begin preparing to conduct your investigation, your separate investigation of that event?
Yes.
And did part of your preparation and part of your participation in this investigation include you going to the scene at the corner of Shepherd and Barron Drive in Balch Springs, Texas?
Yes.
And when did you first go?
That evening.
If I threw out the date of April the 30th of 2017, was that the first date you went out to that scene?
Yes.
And approximately what time did you arrive?
I truly don't remember.
Who did you go with?
I can tell you what our typical protocol is, but I honestly don't recall who I rode with. I know Mr. Lewis was there.
And did you and Mr. Lewis actually both get signed into the crime scene log out there that evening?
I believe so.
Show you Defendant's Exhibit number 9 and ask if you've ever seen a copy of that document before.
Yes.
Is this something we might commonly refer to as a crime scene log?
Yes.
And down towards the bottom of page 1, you see some names.
Yes.
Do you recognize those names?
Yes.
Who are they?
I recognize looks like Chief Investigator, I think that says Randall Johnson. It appears to be a signature. Investigator T. Dotson, who's one of the public integrity investigators. Prosecutor G. Lewis, which is Mr. Lewis, and Prosecutor J. Hermes, which is me.
And Prosecutor G. Lewis, Mr. George Lewis has been participating in the prosecution of this case, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And the other two individuals you noted, Johnson and Dotson, who are they?
Investigator Dotson is an investigator with the DA's office currently, and was that. Investigator Johnson was the chief investigator at the time. He's no longer with the DA's office. He's retired.
Who are Defendants 9? No objections, Judge.
Defense 9 is admitted for record purposes only, for purposes of this hearing. Thank you.
Since April the 30th of 2017, have you been what we might refer to as the lead prosecutor on the case against Mr. Allman? Who has that been?
Mr. Snipes.
Have you been continually participating in the prosecution of this case against Mr. Allman?
I have been involved in various stages, but I would consider my involvement to be in a supportive or ancillary capacity, quite honestly.
Part of your involvement was to participate in the grand jury presentation of this case, is that right?
Yes.
And that was done primarily on July 17th of 2017, is that right?
I believe so.
And were you present during the entire grand jury presentation?
I don't think so.
Were you present for the direct examination of Detective Carranza?
Based on my review of the record, I was present.
Before the grand jury presentation of this case, did the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office receive reports from the Dallas County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
And did you review reports that were prepared by Detective Carranza?
Yes.
Did you review reports that were prepared by Detective Fetter?
I know with Detective Fetter, we reviewed a search warrant application. I don't recall specifically if I reviewed any other documents prepared by Detective Fetter.
Do you recall reviewing documents before the grand jury presentation on July 17th of 2017 that detailed the results and the information gained during a walkthrough interview with Mr. Oliver on the early morning hours of April 30th of 2017?
I can tell you, Mr. Gill, that the case summary that the Dallas County Sheriff's Office prepared was reviewed by us. I don't remember specifically the paragraph that I've since read, since you've raised this. I don't specifically recall that being consequential to me at the time because of the existence of the body cams, but I have no doubt that that was in there at the time.
And if it was in there, being a diligent and conscientious prosecutor, you reviewed it, is that correct?
I'm not denying that it was reviewed. I just can't tell you honestly what I recall it.
You would expect you would have reviewed it, is that correct?
Yes.
You would expect that you would have reviewed every bit of information you could find with regard to this case before you took it to the Dallas County Grand Jury, is that right?
I can tell you that I reviewed the material that was provided to me, and I seek all other obvious materials so that I'm as informed as possible.
And one of the obvious materials you would want to find would certainly be the main offense report regarding the case.
That's accurate.
And the information regarding the walkthrough interview was contained in the main offense report that you received from the Dallas County Sheriff's Office, is that right?
I don't doubt that.
Do you recall when you received that report?
No, sir.
It was in advance of the grand jury presentation, is that right?
Yes, I'm certain it was.
Did you have occasion to apply to a district court for orders sealing search warrant affidavits?
I've seen that, yes.
Well, he's marking that. Sheriff, would you get a note to, hang on just a second, Mr. Gill. Would you get a note to Martin and tell the judge? Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, buddy. Go ahead, whenever y'all are ready.
Defendant's Exhibit number 10 that you have in front of you, do you recognize Defendant's Exhibit 10?
Yes, sir.
It's in fact an application that you submitted to a court to seal a search warrant affidavit in this case, is that correct?
Yes.
In order to want to do that, you probably review the search warrant affidavit before you prepare this application, is that right?
Yes.
And in the application, one of the things you detailed was that public disclosure of the affidavit would jeopardize the safety of witnesses, including the involved officer for whom it's reported has received death threats. Is that correct?
I'll take your word that that's what I wrote on there. Okay, you wanted me to read that and agree with you?
Yes. If you do agree with it.
Yes, sir.
And that's your signature just below that recitation.
Yes, sir.
You're welcome, defendants down.
No objection.
Defense 10 is admitted. Thank you.
You also participated in this case by conducting the board hour examination of the jury back on, I believe it was June 29th, is that right?
Yes.
Judge, the defense is about to offer the 3 copies of the public integrity's written policy. The state has no objection to those. We can save the time going to record.
Mr. Gill, once they're marked, I'll ask you if you'll agree with that or not. Go ahead, Ms. Wood.
Defendants 11, 12, and 13.
No objection.
Defense 11 through 13 are admitted inclusive for purposes of this hearing.
Mr. Hermes, are you familiar with defendants 11, 12, and 13?
Yes, sir.
Those are all, those are three different variations of the same policy of the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office regarding your procedure in officer-involved shootings and death investigations that are done by the Public Integrity Unit and also your Civil Rights Unit. Is that correct?
Yeah, Judge, it looks like Defendant's Exhibit 11 was the procedures in place after June 6 of 16. It appears that Defendants 12 are going to be the procedures that were in place after May 4, 2017. It appears that your Exhibit 13 is going to be the procedures in place after January 29 of 2018.
Were you the chief of the Public Integrity Unit during all of these times?
Yes. I believe that I was made the chief of the unit either December of 15 or January of 2016.
And with regard to each of these policies, I believe it's 5D and E. Actually, only 5D.
Yes, sir.
5D of each of these three variations of your policy detail a procedure for dealing with internal affairs investigation information that's obtained from various law enforcement agencies. Is that correct?
Yes.
And your office actually has a policy that upon receipt of the internal affairs investigation information, that someone from your office actually reviews the information. Is that correct?
Upon receipt of an internal affairs file, the policy requires that the file, before it is reviewed by anybody who could be involved in a prosecution effort, review it and extract from it any potential guilty information.
And that is the policy of your office during the time this investigation is ongoing. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So it was the policy of your office to obtain the internal affairs / Garrity information from the police department. Is that right?
Yes.
And then once you obtained it, I believe you referred to this during a previous court hearing as a taint investigation. Is that correct?
Well, that's what we informally call the individual who's going to be reviewing the file in the first instance to remove any guilty. That person we call a tainted individual. At that point, that person is walled off from any other role whatsoever in the prosecution effort.
And in this case, in Mr. Oliver's case, the internal affairs investigation, including what we would commonly refer to as the Garrity statement, was obtained from the Ball Springs Police Department. Is that correct?
Judge, I can't tell you what's included in the Garrity redacted portion of this. I can tell you that it is my understanding. I wasn't part of the process by which it was requested or received. I can tell you by hearsay my understanding of how that process occurred. I can tell you from my understanding, having talked to other individuals who did the preliminary review of the file, but I can tell you that I didn't have any direct role in that.
Do you recall representing to the court during a pretrial hearing that an investigator from your office had in fact reviewed the internal affairs investigation conducted on Officer Oliver and had identified a Garrity statement?
I recall telling Judge Birmingham in open court that I believe a very simple breakdown of what the process was. I don't know if I named names because I don't know if I even knew at the time we did it, but I might have. But I can tell you, if you want me to tell you right now what my understanding of what happened was, I'm more than happy to do that. I just want to make sure that you know that I've heard that from the involved prosecutors.
And Judge, at this point, I think Mr. Hermes has established that anything he says beyond this will be his understanding from what he's heard. It would be hearsay. He has no direct knowledge. So I object based on relevance to any further questions down this line.
Any reply, Mr. Gill?
I understand what his answer was, and I do have some further questions.
All right, I'm going to sustain the state's objection.
Thank you, Judge.
During the hearing, the pretrial hearing that you just made reference to, did you in fact leave the courtroom, go back to somewhere in the criminal district attorney's office and obtain an envelope that you represented to the court contained the documents that the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office had received from the Ball Springs Police Department?
No.
Who did that?
If you know by your own personal knowledge.
I don't know.
Do you know how the envelope containing the Internal Affairs Investigation report made its way to Judge Birmingham that day?
I can tell you what I asked. I don't know, though.
What did you ask?
I asked Investigator Rendon if she had the file, if she could deliver it personally to Judge Birmingham immediately, and I'm assuming that that hasn't been done.
That did happen. The record should reflect.
I wasn't there for that.
I was. Do you have any questions, Mr. Gladden?
Just a couple, Judge.
All right.
I'm sorry. Mr. Hermes, between April 30th, 2017 and last week, did you know whether the defendant, Roy Oliver, had given a written or oral Gary statement to the Ball Springs Police Department?
No idea.
When did you first learn that he may have given a statement to the Ball Springs Police Department?
When Mr. Gill raised it.
Nothing further, Judge.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Very good. Mr. Hermes, you're excused from being a witness. You can remain in the courtroom. Mr. Gill, unless you have any witnesses that can provide affirmative proof that any of this statements that were given by your client to the Balch Springs Police Department at 3:20. So in other words, if you have any proof, if you can call any witnesses that would show that statements were used from Mr. Oliver at 3:20 that somehow might taint in investigating, questioning, formulation of questions during grand jury proceedings or in this trial, I suppose, that can originate solely from Mr. Oliver and the Balch Springs Police Department, I don't see that anything that you could offer would be relevant. Do you have any witnesses like that?
Judge, I probably don't have any witnesses like that, but then that's not our burden.
Okay, I understand.
I would like to call Lieutenant Rendon to testify that she in fact reviewed that she's a member of the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office, and that she in fact reviewed a statement given by Officer Oliver during the internal affairs investigation procedure, unless of course the DA's office would like to stipulate to that.
Mr. Gladden, what do you think?
One moment, Judge.
Close.
Yes, Judge. We will stipulate that Lieutenant Rendon reviewed the entire IA file and scrubbed all hearing material from it.
All right, Mr. Gill, how does that sound to you?
The statement has been identified for record purposes in previous filings by the defense as Exhibit F. If the state would stipulate to that, then we don't need to call Investigator Rendon.
Judge, before I stipulate to that, A, because I've never seen Exhibit F,
Okay.
can I, Mr. Higginbotham, the defense attorneys, and the court need the court's chambers off the record very, very briefly? I promise this is not a waste of the court's time.
All right, very good. Courts take A. I think Ms. Wood would probably appreciate that.
And Judge, I'm not saying that the DA office
that these folks have seen it. I'm just asking them to agree that it's what we have previously represented in our filings as exhibit F.
Okay. The court's going to take a 10-minute recess. This is what's going to happen when we come back in. I'll hear arguments of counsel regarding the admissibility of any other evidence that is at issue in these hearings. And assuming that there is witnesses that will testify thereafter, I want everybody to line them up and let's get rolling. Court's in recess. Let me see counsel in chambers. Do you envision this to be off the record?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We need to put anything on the record.